Every single morning, millions of people roll out of bed, either skip breakfast entirely or grab something processed on the run, and then spend the rest of the day wondering why their energy nosedives by 10 a.m., why their stomach feels bloated and sluggish, and why that stubborn layer of fat around their midsection refuses to budge no matter what they eliminate from their diet. And here is what genuinely bothers me as a physician. The answer to all three of those complaints is often the exact same thing. And it fits in a single tablespoon. It is not a pharmaceutical. It is not some flashy new supplement backed by paid influencers. It is a natural compound that has been sitting in medical research literature for decades, costs just a few dollars a month, and works through a set of well-documented biological pathways that the average person has simply never been taught. 1 tablespoon every morning before you eat anything else. I am Dr. Leana. I practice emergency medicine, and I have spent nearly a decade watching people arrive in the emergency department with conditions that did not happen overnight. Metabolic disease, cardiovascular events, complications rooted in chronic, low-grade inflammation that built up quietly over years. These experiences are what drive me to share this kind of information now, before it gets to that point. Before we go any further, I do want to ask you a small favor. If you are finding value in these videos, please consider subscribing. Every single one of these episodes is built on hours of reading through clinical research, and your support genuinely helps this channel reach people who need this information. Also, if any of the products discussed in today's video interest you, I have placed links in the description below where you may find helpful options. Thank you sincerely. Now, let us get into it. Before I reveal exactly what that 1 tablespoon contains and how to use it properly, I need you to understand what belly fat actually is, because the vast majority of people think of it as a cosmetic concern. It is not. It is a metabolic one. There are 2 distinct types of fat in your abdominal region. The first is subcutaneous fat. That is the layer sitting just beneath your skin, the kind you can physically pinch with your fingers. The second is visceral fat. Visceral fat is packed deep inside, surrounding your internal organs, your liver, your intestines, your kidneys. And here is the critical difference. Visceral fat does not just sit there quietly in storage, it is biologically active. Researchers have found that it behaves almost like a rogue organ, producing its own inflammatory chemicals, substances known as adipokines and cytokines, that enter your bloodstream and directly interfere with your insulin signaling, your blood pressure regulation, your liver function, and even your appetite control. Think of it this way: subcutaneous fat is like a storage locker. Visceral fat is like an intruder in the control room, actively scrambling the signals that keep your body functioning properly. And visceral fat is notoriously stubborn for a specific reason. It does not respond primarily to simple calorie math. It responds to hormonal and inflammatory signals, particularly insulin sensitivity, cortisol levels, and systemic inflammation. These are the very same systems that become disrupted when your digestive system is chronically starved of the one thing it needs most to function well: fiber. That connection between your gut health and your abdominal fat is the missing piece that most people have never been told about. And it is the connection that 1 tablespoon every morning directly begins to address. So what does this 1 tablespoon actually do inside your body? It is psyllium husk, the ground outer seed coating of the Plantago ovata plant. It is a soluble fiber, and the moment it makes contact with water, it transforms into a thick, viscous gel. That gel performs 3 distinct and powerful functions inside your body simultaneously, and each one is directly relevant to the outcomes we are discussing today. The first function is what researchers call the glucose absorption mechanism. When that gel reaches your small intestine, it coats the intestinal wall and physically slows the rate at which sugar from your food crosses into your bloodstream. Instead of getting a sharp, rapid spike in blood sugar after a meal, the curve becomes gentler, flatter. That means the insulin your pancreas releases in response is also lower. And this matters enormously, because chronically elevated insulin is one of the most direct hormonal signals telling your body to store fat. especially around your abdomen. By smoothing out that spike meal after meal, day after day, you gradually shift the hormonal landscape that visceral fat depends on in order to grow. The second function is the bile acid removal mechanism. Your liver produces bile acids from cholesterol. Every time you eat a meal containing fat, those bile acids are released into your small intestine to help with digestion. Normally, about 95% of those bile acids get reabsorbed and recycled back to the liver. But psyllium gel physically binds to those bile acids before they can be reabsorbed and carries them out of your body. Now your liver, finding itself short on bile acid building blocks, pulls more cholesterol from your blood to manufacture replacements. The result is that LDL cholesterol drops. And because bile acid processing is closely linked to how the liver handles fat metabolism overall, reducing that workload helps the liver process visceral fat more efficiently. The third function involves supporting your digestive transit and gut environment. The gel adds bulk and moisture to the contents moving through your intestines, promoting regular and comfortable transit. A well-functioning digestive system reduces the kind of stagnation and irritation that can contribute to low-grade gut inflammation. And research has shown that psyllium consumption is associated with positive shifts in the gut microbial environment and reduced markers of intestinal inflammation. A healthier gut environment supports better overall metabolic signaling throughout your body. 3 mechanisms running in parallel, all from 1 tablespoon. Now, why specifically in the morning? And why before you eat anything else? Here is the reason, and it is rooted in your own biology. Cortisol, your body's primary stress and alertness hormone, naturally peaks during the first 30 to 60 minutes after you wake up. This is called the cortisol awakening response, and it is a completely normal and healthy part of your circadian rhythm. It sharpens your focus, mobilizes energy, and prepares your systems for the day ahead. But there is a trade-off. When cortisol peaks, it also temporarily increases insulin resistance. Your cells become slightly less responsive to insulin in that early morning window than they will be at any other point during the day. If you eat a carbohydrate-heavy breakfast during that window, or if you skip breakfast entirely and then eat a large first meal later, you are feeding directly into a hormonal state that favors fat storage. Taking psyllium husk about 30 minutes before your first meal directly addresses this. By the time food arrives in your stomach, the gel is already present and has begun coating the upper wall of your small intestine. The glucose from your breakfast enters your bloodstream more gradually. The insulin response is blunted precisely during the window when your body is most susceptible to insulin resistance. You are not just adding fiber to your morning, you are changing the metabolic conversation that happens between your first meal and your physiology every single day. The timing is not merely a suggestion, it is part of the mechanism. Now, before I give you the exact step-by-step protocol, there is one common mistake that undermines most of the benefit of psyllium husk and causes the bloating and discomfort that makes people give up. And that mistake is not drinking enough water. Psyllium works by absorbing water to form its gel. If you do not provide it with sufficient fluid, both at the time you take it and throughout the rest of the day, the gel becomes too thick and too concentrated. Instead of facilitating smooth transit through your digestive system, it slows things down, and the result is bloating, gas, and general discomfort. This is not a reaction to psyllium itself. It is a mechanical consequence of insufficient hydration. The guideline is straightforward. Mix your tablespoon in at least 300 milliliters of water and drink it within 60 seconds of mixing before it thickens. Then drink at least another 300 milliliters of plain water over the following 30 minutes. And across your entire day, aim for a minimum of 2.5 liters of total fluid intake, more if you are physically active. I have spoken with many patients who tried psyllium once, found it uncomfortable, and abandoned it entirely. In nearly every case, the issue was not the fiber. It was that they used too little water, or they let the mixture sit too long before drinking it. Get the hydration right, and the experience changes completely. Here is the protocol I would actually walk a patient through. It has 3 simple phases. Phase 1 is your first week. Start with just half a tablespoon, which is roughly 4 grams, once per day, mixed in water, taken about 30 minutes before breakfast. If your gut bacteria have been underfed on fiber for a significant period, which is true for the majority of adults, introducing a concentrated fiber source can temporarily increase gas production as your system adjusts. Starting at half the dose for the first 7 days gives your digestive system time to adapt gradually. Most people experience little to no discomfort at this level, and if mild gas does occur, it typically resolves within 3 to 5 days. Phase 2 begins in week 2. Increase to 1 full tablespoon, approximately 7 to 8 grams, 30 minutes before breakfast. This is your primary daily dose and the level at which the bile acid binding, glucose slowing, and gut supporting mechanisms operate at clinically meaningful levels. If your personal health goals include cholesterol management or blood sugar regulation, and this is something you have discussed with your healthcare provider, you can add a second half tablespoon dose 30 minutes before your largest meal later in the day. The clinical studies demonstrating significant reductions in LDL cholesterol and fasting blood glucose use total daily doses in the range of 10 to 12 grams, split across 2 meals. Phase 3 is week 4 and beyond. This is maintenance. The metabolic improvements that come from consistent psyllium use, reduced abdominal inflammation, improved insulin signaling, better cholesterol profiles, these are not one-time effects. They depend on sustained daily intake. Using psyllium occasionally produces occasional effects. Using it daily and consistently produces structural, lasting change. Disclaimer: the information in this video is for educational purposes and is not a substitute for professional medical advice. Always consult with your healthcare provider before starting any new supplement regimen. One important safety note: if you take any prescription medication, particularly thyroid medication, statins, or diabetes medication, you should separate your psyllium dose from your medication by at least 2 hours. The same gel that binds bile acids can also slow the absorption of medications taken at the same time. This is not a reason to avoid psyllium. It is simply a reason to be thoughtful about timing. There are also specific situations where psyllium may not be appropriate. If you have any history of bowel obstruction or narrowing of the digestive tract, do not use psyllium without first speaking to your doctor. If you experience sudden, severe abdominal pain that does not resolve, stop taking it immediately and seek medical attention. If you have any difficulty swallowing, psyllium powder is not safe for you because the gel can adhere in the esophagus before reaching the stomach. And if you ever notice blood in your stool, that is unrelated to psyllium and requires prompt medical evaluation. If none of those conditions apply to you, the safety profile of psyllium husk at recommended doses is extremely well established. It has been used by humans for thousands of years. It carries an FDA-authorized health claim for reducing the risk of cardiovascular disease, a designation that very few natural compounds have earned. Here is what I want you to walk away with today. Belly fat is not a willpower failure. It is not simply a matter of eating too many calories. For a great many people, it is a metabolic environment problem. When your gut is chronically undernourished in terms of fiber, the downstream consequences include disrupted insulin signaling, increased systemic inflammation, and a hormonal environment that actively promotes fat storage around the abdomen. Psyllium husk, taken consistently every morning before your first meal, begins to restore that environment. Not through some magical fat-burning chemistry, but by addressing the upstream biological conditions that made fat accumulation so resistant to everything else you may have tried. It slows glucose absorption, it helps clear excess cholesterol, and it supports a healthier gut, all from 1 simple tablespoon. 1 tablespoon, before you eat, every single morning. Built into your routine the same way you think about brushing your teeth or drinking your first glass of water. That is the intervention. The science explains why it works. Your consistency determines whether it does. If you found this helpful, please subscribe. This channel exists for one purpose: to translate what the clinical research actually says into something clear and actionable for real people before health problems become emergencies. Every subscriber helps this work reach someone who needs it. I am deeply grateful for each one of you. Take care of yourself, and I will see you in the next one.